What happens when the fortress meant to be impenetrable burns under its own sky? When the weapons you built to project power become trophies in enemy hands? When distance, the oldest defense in warfare, collapses in a single night? This isn't hypothetical. It's what unfolded when Ukraine rewrote the rules of modern conflict, turning Russia's strengths into vulnerabilities and their armor into Ukraine's arsenal. Tonight, you'll witness how a cascading campaign dismantled Moscow's defenses layer by layer until the capital itself stared up at flames it never thought it would see. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. It really helps the channel grow. It was 2:17 inches the morning. Deep within concealed airfields scattered across Ukraine, the silence held its breath. Then, engines awakened. Ukrainian long-range drones lifted into darkness, their propellers cutting through cold air as high-precision rockets and Storm Shadow cruise missiles erupted from launch sites along the Dnipro River. This wasn't a single raid. It was orchestrated devastation, a symphony of destruction aimed at dismantling Russia's forward defenses at Belgorod, the final barrier shielding Moscow. Within moments, that silence would explode, and what followed became a masterclass in coordinated warfare. The first assault wave swept across the border, flying just 30 meters above the ground. Ukrainian drones threaded through river valleys, invisible to Russian radar systems. Simultaneously, ATACMS missiles screamed overhead at nearly 3 times the speed of sound, their warheads obliterating radar installations and early warning stations ringing Belgorod's perimeter. Monitors went black. Operators froze. In seconds, Russia's frontier eyes had been torn out. On the ground, metal moved. Leopard 2, a 6 tanks alongside Britain's Challenger 2 seconds, surged forward at speeds exceeding 60 kilometers per hour, their 120mm cannons shattering the night with thunderous precision. Every shot had purpose. Command centers crumbled, ammunition convoys erupted, dug-in artillery positions vanished in blinding fireballs. Infantry fighting vehicles pressed close behind, deploying squads into gaps carved by the advancing armor. Russia's response came quickly. Columns of T-72 seconds and BMP infantry carriers roared out from Belgorod's southern sectors, desperate to halt the offensive. But Ukrainian forces had prepared the battlefield. Anti-tank mines laced every approach, detonating in brutal flashes that shredded the lead vehicles. Javelin and NLAW missiles followed, hunting stragglers as chaos consumed the Russian formations. By sunrise, smoke pillars stretched thousands of meters into the sky above Belgorod. The city's logistics hub lay in ruins, fuel depots consumed by fire, rail yards shattered beyond recognition. For Ukraine, Russia's interior door now swung wide open. Belgorod's flames still painted the horizon when Ukraine drove deeper. With the frontline hub crippled, the next objective materialized. Voronezh, a sprawling industrial city 300 kilometers north, feeding Moscow's war machine with fuel, ammunition, and equipment. From above, Ukrainian Su-27 seconds and Mi-G 29 seconds sliced through the night at 5,000 meters, wings heavy with GPS-guided munitions. As they approached Voronezh, bombs dropped free, their guidance kits steering them with surgical accuracy. Moments later, massive oil storage facilities erupted, sending flame towers over 150 meters high. Shockwaves shattered windows across entire neighborhoods. The glow was visible for miles, a strike no propaganda could erase, but Russia wasn't standing idle. From the Black Sea depths, a submarine unleashed Caliber cruise missiles, racing north at nearly 1,000 kilometers per hour. Within minutes, alarms screamed across Ukrainian positions, yet Patriot PAC-3 batteries stood ready. Radar locked, interceptors launched skyward at over Mach 4, meeting the Calibers head-on. Mid-air explosions painted the sky orange, fragments scattering harmlessly across empty fields. Ukraine had absorbed the counterpunch. Closer to Earth, the battle turned vicious. Along the M4 highway, Russia's primary supply corridor to Moscow, convoys of trucks and armored carriers thundered northward, headlights cutting through darkness. Then came the buzzing. Small at first, insignificant until it multiplied into a lethal swarm. FPV kamikaze drones plunged at nearly 200 kilometers per hour, each carrying kilograms of explosives. One after another, they hammered into fuel tankers, ammunition haulers, and armored escorts. Explosions cascaded down the highway like dominoes, fire devouring vehicle after vehicle until the road became a corridor of wreckage. By dawn, Voronezh was unrecognizable. Oil depots burned out of control. Ammunition caches detonated in chain reactions. The M4 highway lay littered with twisted metal and charred remains. Russia's resupply line to Moscow had been severed, its logistical artery hemorrhaging flames. For Ukraine, this strike transcended tactics. It was strategic. With Belgorod crippled and Voronezh ablaze, Moscow stood increasingly isolated. Voronezh burned through the night, its infrastructure reduced to rubble. Russia, humiliated on home soil, couldn't remain silent. The Kremlin ordered retaliation not from Moscow's skies, but from beneath the Black Sea's waves. Below the surface, a Russian Kilo-class submarine glided silently, missile tubes loaded with Kalibr cruise missiles. At 3:42 a.m., hatches burst open. One after another, missiles erupted into darkness, rocket motors igniting with fiery tails as they arced north toward Kiev, flying just below the speed of sound. Each carried a 450-kilogram warhead designed to shred command centers and critical infrastructure. The Kremlin anticipated shock and terror. Instead, the missiles met steel resolve. Radar screens across Ukraine illuminated. Patriot PAC-3 batteries, already alert, launched interceptors skyward at Mach 4, their contrails slicing through darkness. Within seconds, the first intercepts lit the night above Kiev, blinding flashes followed by debris showers. Of dozens of missiles fired, most were obliterated mid-air, their fragments raining harmlessly into open fields. The message was unmistakable. Ukraine's shield held firm, but Russia wasn't finished. From Black Sea frigates, P-800 Onyx supersonic missiles launched, tearing across water at over 4,000 kilometers per hour. Their low trajectory made interception difficult, screaming toward Ukrainian coastal infrastructure. Yet Ukraine had prepared for this front too. As the Onyx missiles raced inland, the sea fought back. From hidden ports and camouflaged bays, Ukraine deployed naval drones, low profile, explosive-packed craft skimming just above the waves. They closed on Russian frigates at 50 knots, weaving through tracer fire. Simultaneously, Neptune anti-ship missiles thundered from their launchers, homing toward the enemy fleet. Caught between drones from below and missiles from above, Russia's naval formation fractured. One frigate swerved violently, colliding with another as a Neptune warhead slammed into its hull. Flames erupted across the deck, sailors scrambling as secondary explosions lit the nighttime sea. Meanwhile, a naval drone found its mark, ramming into a corvette's stern and detonating in a towering spray of water and fire. By dawn, the Black Sea churned with smoke and wreckage. Russia's retaliation had failed to penetrate Ukraine's defenses, and in the process, a new front had been forced open. The war was no longer confined to land and air, it had become a battle for control of the sea. For Moscow, the cost became clear. Every strike to reassert dominance stretched forces thinner, while Ukraine only grew bolder. The Black Sea still smoldered with Russian naval wreckage when Ukraine shifted the fight inland. The naval clash had done more than damage steel. It forced Russia to divide its strength, stretching defenses thin. And in that moment of disarray, Ukraine prepared the next phase, the long road to Moscow itself. At 4:28 a.m., the first wave of long-range drones slipped across the frontier, each carrying 40 to 45 kilograms of explosives, their small engines humming just above the treetops. Flying at barely 60 meters, they hugged river valleys, traced forest edges, and shadowed roads like ghosts. Radar stations swept the skies overhead, but the drones were phantoms too low, too slow, too quiet to register. For hundreds of kilometers, they moved north unseen, their waypoints calculated with surgical precision, but the drones were only one element of the assault. From the skies, Storm Shadow cruise missiles streaked forward at nearly 1,000 kilometers per hour, their targets Russian air bases near Tula, just 160 kilometers south of Moscow. Within seconds, hardened shelters cracked open, fireballs consuming runways and fuel depots. More critically, the strikes grounded Russian fighter squadrons' jets that might have intercepted the incoming waves never left the ground. Meanwhile, on the ground below, Ukraine's shadow warriors advanced. Special forces units slipped through darkness, striking deep behind enemy lines. Their mission wasn't destruction, it was silence. Near Tula, they infiltrated relay stations and fiber optic hubs, planting charges along Russia's military communication cables. At 5:12 a.m., the detonations ripped through the network. In an instant, entire sectors went dark. Commanders shouting into dead radios, orders lost in static. For a brief but critical window, Russia was blind. The effect was suffocating. Drones advanced unchecked, missiles hammered airfields, explosions rolled across highways, and Russian commanders, unable to coordinate, could only react piecemeal. Every move came too late. Every defense fractured before it formed. This was more than firepower, it was choreography. Air, land, and cyber, woven together in one relentless offensive. Each strike fed the next. Each success opened a door for another blow. Ukraine's message was unmistakable. Moscow was no longer shielded by distance, nor by the myth of invulnerability. Every valley, every forest, every river had become a pathway for war. By sunrise, the road to Moscow lay open, and for the first time in generations, Russia's capital faced the unthinkable. A war that had crossed every frontier and was now pressing toward its very heart. The strikes near Tula had barely stopped echoing when the drones pressed forward, their flight paths curving north, skimming rivers and forests until Moscow's lights flickered on the horizon. For decades, the capital had been wrapped in concentric rings of air defense, S-400 batteries, Pantsir launchers on rooftops, radar arrays stretching hundreds of kilometers. Russian generals boasted the city was untouchable. Now, in the early morning hours, that illusion was about to collapse. At 5:41 a.m., alarms wailed across the city. On tower blocks and government roofs, Pantsir systems snapped to life, their barrels tilting skyward. Tracer fire ripped through darkness, green and red streaks clawing at the night. S-400 missiles launched in deafening bursts, their exhaust plumes lighting entire districts like false dawn. Some drones were shredded mid-air, fragments raining down on empty streets. But not all. Several slipped through the chaos. One drone tore across the southern district before slamming into a fuel depot, the explosion sending a fireball hundreds of meters high. Another struck the glass towers of Moscow City's financial hub. Shards of glass cascaded down like glittering rain, while smoke gushed upward into the skyline once thought impregnable. Russian fighters scrambled too late. MiG 31 seconds and Su 35 seconds clawed into the sky, but coordination faltered with communications still crippled from earlier strikes. Pilots had no clear targets, no unified command. The result was confusion, jets circling above a city already burning, chasing shadows, while more drones buzzed past beneath them. For ordinary Muscovites, it was a night unlike any in living memory. People poured onto balconies, phones in hand, recording the fire streaks and detonations. Panic spread across neighborhoods as sirens wailed and highways jammed. For the first time since the Second World War, Moscow was under direct attack, its residents staring upward in disbelief as war unfolded over their own rooftops. Smoke still rose over Moscow's skyline when the digital battlefield erupted. Within minutes, videos of fireballs and tracer fire flooded Telegram, Twitter, and TikTok. Apartment balconies had become observation posts, citizens recording the night sky ablaze above their own city. The Kremlin's early claim that all drones were destroyed collapsed instantly under the weight of viral footage, showing burning towers and shattered glass. For the Russian elite, the shock cut deeper. Oligarchs who once believed their wealth and proximity to power insulated them, now stared at screens in disbelief. If drones could punch through the capital's billion-dollar defenses, what mansion, what private jet, what was truly safe? Ministers whispered in panic. Generals shuffled blame. In marble halls and secret bunkers, the same unspoken question echoed. If Moscow can burn, what can't? The symbolism cut deeper than the explosions themselves. For years, Russians were told the war was distant, contained. Now it had come home, clawing at the very heart of the state. And in that moment, Ukraine's message was undeniable. The war you unleash will no longer stay beyond your borders. It is here on your streets, under your sky, at your doorstep. As the last echoes of panic rippled through Moscow, the verdict was clear. Belgorod lay crippled, Voronezh consumed by flames, and even the capital itself had been pierced. Russia's vaunted air defenses shattered in a single campaign. Strategically, the Kremlin was forced to pull assets from the front lines to shield its own heart, weakening its armies elsewhere. Yet amid the devastation, Ukrainian soldiers tended to captured and wounded Russians, proving victory need not mean cruelty. Above Moscow, trails of drone smoke still lingered in the dawn light, a stark symbol of a new era of warfare now begun. At 3:47 a.m., on the outskirts of Donetsk Oblast, the air was cold and damp, clinging to the fields like a second skin. Without warning, a Russian armored battalion, over 60 main battle tanks backed by fuel trucks and command vehicles, rolled out from a forward staging area, heading toward a thinly held Ukrainian defensive sector. Their route cut across open farmland, broken only by scattered tree lines. This wasn't just an advance, it was a regimental-sized push to sever a key supply route. In seconds, the calm would shatter, and what followed would become a lesson in modern warfare written in fire, steel, and the unblinking eye of combat drones. Beneath layers of reinforced concrete and steel, in a dimly lit underground command post, the air was tense and still. Screens flickered with fresh satellite imagery and live drone feeds from forward reconnaissance units. The reports were unmistakable. Russia's armored battalion was less than 20 kilometers from breaching the sector's thin defensive line. The Southern Front's commanding general didn't hesitate. His voice cut through the room like a blade. Intercept now. Don't give them time to dig in. Within minutes, a multi-phase battle plan snapped into place. First, high-altitude reconnaissance UAVs would maintain constant visual on the column, marking targets and identifying weak spots in the formation. Then waves of loitering munitions precision kamikaze drones would spearhead the assault, slamming into lead tanks and fuel carriers to break momentum. Next came the flying mines. Small quadcopters armed with shaped charges, tasked with disabling tracks and immobilizing armor caught in choke points. As chaos spread through the column, motorcycle assault teams would surge forward, weaving between stalled vehicles, targeting exposed crews and seizing control of abandoned machines. Finally, infantry units would close in from multiple vectors, cutting off escape routes and tightening the noose around any remaining Russian forces. It was a plan designed for speed, precision, and psychological impact. And every second of preparation brought the Ukrainians closer to unleashing it. The battlefield was about to shift from open farmland to a killing ground controlled entirely from the sky. At 4:05 a.m., the plan finalized in the underground command post less than 20 minutes earlier roared into life. From two different approach vectors, one sweeping in from the northeast, the other from the south, a pair of Bayraktar TB-2 strike drones glided silently through the pre-dawn darkness. High above the tree lines, their infrared optics painted crisp outlines of the Russian formation below, pinpointing the most critical nodes in the armored column, command vehicles and fuel trucks. The TB-2S launched their first salvo laser-guided munitions that struck with surgical precision. The first explosion tore through a fuel truck, sending a geyser of fire and smoke hundreds of meters into the air. The second ripped apart another tanker, its burning wreckage spilling across the road and blocking half the column. By the third strike, a mobile command vehicle took a direct hit, its radio mast folding in on itself like a collapsing tower. Almost simultaneously, a wave of loitering munitions, small, agile, and nearly invisible, against the dim horizon descended on the convoy from the opposite flank. They dove straight into their marks. 2 more fuel carriers and an auxiliary communications vehicle. In under 2 minutes, 4 fuel trucks and 1 key communications vehicle were nothing more than twisted, burning husks. The effect was immediate and devastating. Without fuel resupply, the tanks couldn't push far. Without reliable communications, their coordination collapsed. Russian operators scrambled to re-establish contact, but the jamming effect of burning equipment and fragmented signals left them in disarray. The battalion's advance ground to a halt. Dozens of tanks and armoured personnel carriers now sat exposed in the middle of open farmland, engines idling, crews scanning nervously for threats they couldn't yet see. The once formidable column had transformed into a stationary, vulnerable target, a steel serpent frozen in place. From the Ukrainian perspective, it was exactly as planned. Phase 1 was complete, momentum broken, command disrupted, and fuel lines severed. The battlefield had shifted in their favour, and the next waves of the operation, flying mines, rapid assault teams, and infantry encirclement were already moving into position. The Russians just didn't know it yet. The burning fuel truck still sent thick black plumes hundreds of meters into the sky when Russian commanders tried to salvage the situation. Realizing their armored column was now stranded in open terrain, they ordered self-propelled artillery forward to provide covering fire and clear a path. 2 massive S-19 Star-S howitzers began lumbering up from the rear, their crews hoping to suppress any Ukrainian positions before the ambush could escalate further. But the Ukrainians had anticipated this move. From concealed positions nearly 6 kilometers away, a swarm of FPV attack drones streaked over the fields. Guided by live video feeds and flown with pinpoint accuracy, they dove straight into the exposed artillery pieces. The first hit detonated a full ammunition rack inside the lead howitzer, blasting its turret skyward in a shower of fire and steel. Seconds later, the second Mr. S erupted into a boiling fireball, its crew never having fired a shot. With Russian artillery support neutralized, Ukraine moved to Phase 2. Fast-moving armored assault teams, lightly equipped for speed, raced in from opposite ends of the column. Their goal was clear: seal off the convoy's escape routes. Within minutes, Ukrainian BTRs and MRAPs blocked both the northern and southern exits, hemming the Russians into a narrow kill zone barely 1,000 meters long. The trapped Russian crews tried to reposition, but the disarray from the earlier drone strikes left them confused and vulnerable. Ukrainian gunners positioned in concealed tree lines opened up with anti-tank guided missiles and precision mortar fire. Each strike was methodical, targeting vehicles that tried to maneuver or pivot their turrets toward the flanks. The effect was suffocating. Several tanks threw tracks as they tried to reverse over uneven ground, immobilizing themselves. Others, fearing a direct hit, were abandoned by their crews who fled on foot toward distant hedgerows. The once organized armored spearhead had devolved into scattered pockets of resistance, each isolated and unable to coordinate. By the end of the second phase, the convoy was no longer a threat. It was a collection of stranded, demoralized machines. The Russians had lost their artillery cover, their mobility, and their ability to break contact. For Ukraine, the kill zone was now fully established, and the stage was set for the night raid that would strip the Russians of both their armor and their will to fight. The steel serpent was cornered, and its head was about to be cut off. Night fell over the kill zone like a shroud, the last embers from burning Russian vehicles casting a faint orange glow across the open fields. By now, the trapped battalion was cut off, artillery support gone, escape routes sealed. That's when Ukrainian special operations units moved in for the decisive strike. Approaching under total blackout conditions, the operators advanced in small fire teams, weaving through hedgerows and shallow drainage ditches to stay hidden. Each carried compact RF jamming devices tuned to disrupt and blind the infrared camera systems mounted on Russian tanks and armored vehicles. Within seconds of activation, the targeting feeds in the Russian optics went dark, leaving their gunners effectively blind in the moonless night. Confusion spread quickly through the stranded column. Tank crews peered into the void, unable to spot movement beyond a few meters. Some began firing wildly into the darkness, wasting precious ammunition. Others made the split-second decision to abandon their machines entirely. That was when the Ukrainians struck. Using suppressed weapons and thermal scopes, they cleared vehicle by vehicle with ruthless efficiency. Those who resisted were pinned down or flushed out with stun grenades. Those who surrendered were disarmed and escorted away under guard. A number of Russian soldiers simply ran south toward the distant tree line, hoping to escape in the dark. By 2:30 a.m., the scale of the seizure was staggering. 20 main battle tanks, mostly T-72 seconds and T-80 seconds, captured intact. Many still had their main guns loaded, fuel tanks full, and communication gear operational. It was as if the crews had left mid-mission, walking away from machines worth millions of dollars apiece. Ukrainian engineers and recovery crews moved in almost immediately. Under the cover of darkness, they began towing the captured armor toward friendly lines. Some of the more operational tanks were driven out by Ukrainian soldiers who had trained on the same models earlier in the war. The night raid was over in less than 2 hours. What remained in the field were smoldering wrecks, discarded weapons, and the unmistakable absence of the Russian armored spearhead. The battlefield that had started the day as a threat to Ukraine's southern flank was now an open graveyard of steel, and Ukraine held the keys to every tank worth saving. By dawn, the night raid had left the once formidable Russian column gutted and silent. In the pale first light, Ukrainian recovery crews rolled in, their armored tow vehicles and flatbeds rumbling across the churned-up fields. One by one, the captured tanks, still glistening with dew and streaked with soot, were hooked up and hauled towards secured staging areas behind the lines. For the more intact machines, there was no time to waste. Ukrainian tank crews, many already trained on T-72 and T-80 platforms, climbed into the still warm driver seats. Engines roared back to life, and columns of liberated armor began making the 20-kilometer trip to friendly territory under their own power. At forward depots, military engineers and mechanics worked in tight, efficient teams. Each tank underwent a rapid inspection checking engine performance, ammunition storage, and damage to optics or armor. The first task was always the same: strip away Russian markings and paint on fresh Ukrainian insignia. Then came the communications overhaul, replacing or reprogramming radios to mesh with Ukrainian command networks. Some of the best-conditioned tanks were earmarked for immediate redeployment. Within hours, a few were already en route to reinforce active sectors on the front, a turnaround so fast it blurred the line between spoils of war and active combat assets. But the vehicles carried more than firepower. Inside the compartments, Ukrainian intelligence teams uncovered a trove of sensitive materials: encryption devices, detailed battlefield maps, and radio frequency data still loaded into onboard systems. These were rushed to secure analysis centers where signals experts began sifting through for clues about Russian unit dispositions, command protocols, and planned movements. In terms of raw intelligence value, it was the kind of jackpot no satellite could buy. By mid-morning, the field where the Russian spearhead had stalled was empty, save for burned-out hulks and scattered debris. The real prize was already moving either on the back of a Ukrainian flatbed or rumbling under its own treads toward new missions. What had started the night before as a high-risk raid had ended in one of the war's most efficient battlefield conversions, turning enemy steel into Ukrainian strength and their own technology into weapons that could, and soon, would be used against them. The operation's impact was felt far beyond the smoking field where the Russian column once stood. Tactically, Ukraine had delivered a textbook demonstration of multi-phase warfare, integrating UAV reconnaissance, precision drone strikes, special forces raids, and rapid armored exploitation into a seamless sequence. What began as a scattered convoy of over 60 Russian tanks had been systematically broken down, isolated, and transformed into a resource for the very army it sought to destroy. Psychologically, the blow to Russian forces was profound. News traveled fast through the ranks. Entire tank crews had fled, their vehicles now in Ukrainian hands, some already redeployed to active fronts. For Russian soldiers, the realization that their own weapons could be turned against them within days eroded any remaining sense of security. Confidence in their ability to protect high-value assets, tanks, artillery, and command vehicles was shaken to the core. On the information front, Ukraine seized the narrative as effectively as it had seized the armor. Images of captured Russian tanks, freshly painted with Ukrainian flags, flooded social media and global news outlets. The symbolism was impossible to miss. Russia, in effect, had become one of Ukraine's largest suppliers of tanks. What might have been just another battlefield victory instead became a strategic public relations triumph, reinforcing Ukraine's image as resourceful, adaptive, and relentless. It was a message broadcast to the world and an even louder warning to Moscow. In less than 48 hours, Ukraine had seized 50 Russian main battle tanks, dismantling an entire armored push and flipping the momentum of the fight in Donetsk Oblast. What began as a potential breakthrough for Russian forces ended as a complete reversal, one that left Ukraine not only with valuable hardware, but also with a renewed battlefield advantage. Strategically, the loss was crippling for Moscow. An entire assault element had been removed from the order of battle, forcing Russian planners to rethink operations across the sector. The reputational damage was just as severe. Footage of abandoned, captured, and repainted tanks undermined years of military posturing. The victory raised a sharper question, one both tactical and psychological. Is any Russian convoy truly safe from this style of warfare? And if not, how long can Moscow afford to leave this vulnerability unaddressed before it becomes a recurring nightmare? The lesson was clear. In modern war, speed, layered coordination, and real-time intelligence can neutralize even the heaviest armored formations faster than any single wonder weapon. Ukraine's fusion of UAV reconnaissance, special forces, raids, and mechanized exploitation had turned raw agility into decisive power. As the first light of dawn spread across the horizon, black columns of smoke climbed into the grey sky. Through the haze, Ukrainian soldiers guided Russian prisoners away from the wreckage, a victory measured not just in captured steel, but in humanity preserved amid the fire and ruin.